Hi there! Welcome to the unicorn hat assembly video by Homemade by Giggles. That is me, and here is the hat. So you can find this pattern on my blog, which is at homemadebygiggles.com. You can search under my patterns, and it's called a unicorn hat. And as you can see, it's got a horn, a couple of ears, and a whole lot of curly hair at the back. So what I've done here is I've assembled all the pieces, which I'll show you now. I am recording this in my basement because my children are home and being a little bit loud. So if you do hear noises, it's probably my furnace or something of that nature. Okay, so let's get started. So here's what the hat looks like. I apologize for the shadows. The lighting is not so great down here in the basement, but it works for me. And I'll individually go over the pieces we have, and then I'll start stitching them together and show you how I do it. So to start, we have the hat piece, which is a pretty standard size hat. In this project I use a 4.5mm crochet hook. We have our unicorn horn, and we'll have a little tiny bit of batting that we'll use to stuff that, not very much at all. We have our two ears that look like this. Again, I have all my loose ends here still because I've got some of them for sewing, and I'll tuck them all in and cover all that. We have two eyes. I've kind of made some modifications to the eyes based on the pattern I posted, and I'll be modifying the pattern online as well. But here I chose to have purple centers. I'm not sure how well you can see the purple in the video, but there you go. So there's purple sort of colors on the eyes and enough tails to do some eyelashes as well. And I'll also use a crochet hook a little bit in the assembly just to help pull some hair through. I've got a needle that I'm using. This one is a sharper one than I usually use just because I have it available right now. Some scissors, and then I have my big stack of curly hair. And the curly hair is pretty fun. Now what I've done with the hair is after I've created it, which is just simply a long double crochet, I wrapped it around the crochet hook. Let me just grab the hook here. So I kind of wrapped it around to shape it, and then I actually sprayed it with a starch spray. So I use this one, which is an Easy On Speed Starch. I don't think there's a brand, it's just called Easy On is the brand. I probably picked it up at Walmart or something like that. And so I sprayed them both sides, just a quick and then turned over and let it dry. And that might help it hold its curl because otherwise it might stretch out. And that's fine too, you can always just reshape it with your hand. So these are the pieces I'm using, and let's get ahead and get into the assembly, starting with the horn. Okay, so for the start, we've got our hat. And the loose ends should be already tied in on the hat itself. There should only be one at the top and one at the bottom. And if you've done the hat right, there's really no way to know which way is the front, which way is the back. It's pretty seamless, so you can really start anywhere. If I do look closely, I can see the seam right here going up sort of at an angle, but it's very hard to see, and only someone who knows what they're looking for will be able to find it. Either way, I'm going to turn it around and put the unicorn horn at the front. Now the horn's not super pointy. I didn't think it made sense to try to make it really pointy as it's a kid's hat, probably. I'm going to take some batting. I've just got this sort of plastic batting, and I'm just going to use the end of my crochet hook to push some in there. It doesn't need very much at all. So then, as far as placement goes, I tend to start it so that it will just go right in the front, about starting around the start of that second circle, the second round of your hat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring my string in here, find the right spot on the hat itself, loop it in to start, and take it from there. And again, none of the placement is too specific in this one. It doesn't really matter in the end, I find, for most of it, because you just want to make it look how you want it to look. And you can always take something out and redo it, which I do all the time. A lot of times people ask me how I assemble things. Sometimes they're not getting the same results, and the trick really is to just keep trying things out. Move things around. Don't be scared to try it and then take it out. Okay, So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go up around a single crochet here, then back down the next one, and then find a corresponding spot on the hat to loop under. So I'm going up and over, back down and in, and you just kind of hold it where you want it to be. And again, there's really no center here that we're doing this in. So as long as you get it in a spot that works for you, then you can work the eyes and ears around it to form that part of the head. Okay, so I've gone all the way back to the start. It's in place. As long as it's kind of roughly where I want it to be, I can get rid of this end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the inside of the hat, pull it through. I make a knot simply by going under a stitch and then going back through it like this. Excuse me. And then so the knot secures it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tuck it right up. Push your needle up through the actual horn. And then pull it up. You can just hide the thread right in there, nothing wrong with that. Oh, so I seem to have caught a little bit of the horn. I'm just going to do one more loop here. As long as it comes out cleanly. Then you simply want to pull it tight and snip as close to the horn without actually hitting the horn strands themselves. And then as soon as you let go of that tension, it's just gonna, the end will just fall into there somewhere. Let's see. And if you need to give it a little push back in, you can. So it's just filled with batting. That way it's secured by the knot underneath. You can't see any ends, and it's really easy. You don't have to weave it in anywhere else. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but the end piece that was here at the start of the horn, I just pulled it in through into the inside at the start, which you could also do at the end afterwards. So there's the horn in place. So then you can center your horn in the middle, because this is going to determine where your ear placement will be. Okay, for the ears, first you want to lay your hat flat. What I've done is, here's the center top, and I've just folded it a little bit behind that because you want your ears to be set a little bit back from the very top middle. So I'm going to try to line them up with the back of that very first round you did of the hat. And you want your unicorn horn obviously to be in the front middle of the hat. So I've laid it flat in that manner so that I've got a little bit of extra on top, so it's not exactly in the top middle, and then the horn's in the middle. And then what we're going to be doing is we'll be putting our ears on here, and I'll show you how to sew those in place. Okay, so for the ear placement, what we want to do is we want to put the ear starting probably at the end of the second round there and going out. You can also put it up a little bit higher, but you need to make sure you leave at least the first round available here for use for putting hair to, and then have the ears on either side. It depends if you want to have them more on the side or if you want them to be kind of upright. I kind of feel like horses have them more upright, so I would tend to put them right outside that first round. And again, you want to be back at the back of that first round. So I'm just going to secure it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the front and then around the back, and I'm just going to kind of turn it at the end so that it forms sort of a concave look for the ears themselves. Again, making sure I'm not going through two thicknesses. So I will start this. And tuck your ends, just tuck them right up inside your ear, because that gap is going to be closed, and then you don't have to weave them in after the fact. Start there, and I'm just going to around like that, go through the top, go through the bottom. So there's one ear in place, pretty simple. And again, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try to pull it forward a little bit, just by putting the yarn to the front, and then I'm going to do my knot up here. Again, the knot that we do, you can do it in the top. You can also do it in the underside, which is a little less risky, but we did 1,000 ends, so I don't really need to do it out of there. So just form that little knot, and then put your needle in and come up through the middle of the ear, in between the two ends there, and just pull it out somewhere like that. That's the knot secured it. Now you just want to hide it, so pull it tight, snip it right close to the ear, and then when you release, that end is gone forever and you don't have to worry about it again. It's much easier than hiding it in the actual fabric. So that's that ear. Again, it's a little bit set back from the middle. You can see the middle here, and it's back just a little tiny bit, and it's along that line when you lay it flat with the horn in the middle. And we will repeat with the second ear, and then I'll come back and we'll look at the eye placement. Okay, I have my ears in place up at the top there, and I've just smoothed this back out because we are going to need to discuss eye placement next. And so here I'm just going to pull in the one that I've already completed. So with the eyes, I've made a couple modifications from my original pattern. Originally I had it all just one color in the center. This time I decided to do black with a little splash of color, and then put this little glimmer here, and I think that's what really separates some of the more finished looking designs from the more handmade stuff. So little details like this little glimmer in the eye and the eyelashes are something that I've just updated, and I'll be updating the pattern online as well to reflect that. So eye placement wise, you want them to come pretty close together. If they don't come too close together, then they're going to look very spaced out when it's on the child's head. So you want them to come very close together, not touching, but very close, a couple stitches maybe between. And we want to have them so that they're starting kind of down on that last row of double crochet before you get to the single crochet on the hat. You can see it here, there's a row of double and then row of single. So we want the eyes to kind of come down right around that last row, and then what we'll do is we'll stitch in eyelashes at the end. So I actually have a really long tail of the black for sewing. In my pattern also I used gray instead of black, my initial pattern, if you're wondering why it looks a little bit different. So for our eyes on this one, I decided to do purple, mainly because both hats are for the same mum, and I want her to be able to tell the different hats apart without having to look, because one is slightly bigger. This one I used a 4.5mm hook, and the other one I used a 4mm hook because it's for a 3-year-old versus a 4-year-old, so it gives it a little more flexibility. So I've done with the eye, with all the ends, is I've moved all the ends to the back, so you can see them there, and I'll just leave them behind when I stitch it. And then I've pulled one white end through, and I'll be able to use that to make that little shimmer in the eye, and the placement of it kind of depends on the angle of the eye and everything, so I've left it off. And then I've got my really long tail here for sewing, so I'll get my needle threaded here, and then we'll figure out where the placement is. I like to start in the front corner to make sure that it's starting where I need it to start, and then from there you can always kind of stretch it and modify it as you go along, knowing that you want to not stretch it very much, because the more you stretch it, the stranger it will sit actually on the hat itself. So this one has its eye glimmer over here. I think I'm going to make it this side, start in the inside like I just mentioned, and you kind of want it to angle up. You could do it like that, but I find it looks a little more authentic when it's going sort of up and out like this. So I'm going to start the stitching here in the middle, again maybe one stitch out from what I would call the middle of the double crochets here, and have it so that the bottom of the eye is going to be bordering on the top of that last double crochet row, so there'll be one visible double crochet row before it gets into the single crochets. Again, it's totally up to you how you place it and where and why, but I'm going to start there. What I'm going to do is I usually have a slip stitch and then a pull through to fasten off. So I usually pull that through just to make it look more like the other stitches, and then I go back through that main corner one here. There we go. And then I'm just going to double check my lining up. Again, when you sew, it kind of pulls it a little bit further than where you have it just sitting there because it pulls it a little tighter. So I'm going to eyeball something like this. I'm going to give that a try. Again, always double check that you're not going through both thicknesses, and I'm not, so that's good. So then I'm simply going to go again up through one single crochet, down through the next, and then go down and loop under a stitch on the hat, then back up and down and loop under a stitch on the hat, and continue in that manner all the way around, making sure that I stretch in the corner so that the corner shape kind of gets a sharper edge than you don't want it to just be a smooth circle because it's kind of purposely made in this oval shape. Okay, so the eye is secured in place, and I've still got my extremely long tail here, and that's for the eyelashes. So if we just take a look, this is how I chose to do them on my unicorn, is this sort of 3 lashes angled a little bit. Again, it's up to you to do whatever you want to do creatively. So what I'm going to do is I want to start over in this far corner. So I'm just going to take where I finished off with the yarn, and I am going to tuck this black in behind the entire eye. So what I need to do is I need to decide kind of where the lashes are going to go and stitch accordingly. So I think what I'm going to do is the first one I'm going to have coming not straight out, that would follow sort of the line of that double crochet row, but one row up, maybe like maybe in between this row and this row. And I'm just eyeballing it and eyeballing the length and stuff. So I'm putting it in where I want that eyelash to be. And then I'm going to bring the needle through the back and bring it back up. Little end hanging out there. Bring it back up through where I would like to start the next eyelash, which I think is going to be here. 2 single crochets over from the original one. I'm going to come up through the middle of that one. So then when you pull that tight, it's going to form that lash there, like that. And you're ready to start your next lash. And then you can eyeball it, and I'm going to kind of look and say, okay, this might be a little too far away because then the next one would have to be way over here. So I'm actually going to backtrack. You can either pull it out or you can just choose to move it over a little bit. I'm just going to zip it over a tiny bit. Okay, that looks better to me, and I'm going to make this one a little bit longer and go a little bit higher. I don't want it to be parallel. Parallel would be there. So I'm going to do it about like that and put it maybe up here. Let's see, about here. And then again, I'm going to bring the needle down and bring it up through where I think I'm going to start my third eyelash. And when you pull it, you don't pull it super tight, but tight enough that it's not going to move around. So those 2 look good to me. And then my last one, I'm going to put, probably, again, I don't want it to be parallel, which would be here. So I'm probably going to put it about there and a little bit longer again. And then once you pull that one through, it doesn't really matter. You don't need to pull it back unless you're going to do, you could absolutely do lashes all the way around or anything like that. I'm just going to go into the inside of the hat here now, just to tie this thread off. So I'm going to tie it off in behind where the eye is. Again, what the inside of the hat looks like doesn't matter, but what you don't want is you don't want to have things that will be loose or irritate the person who's wearing it. So I'm tying the knot, just like I have been all along. And then I'm simply going to run my needle in behind the eye here, making sure I'm not going actually through the front of the eye, so kind of in between the hat and the eye itself. Pull that through, pull a little bit tight, snip, and then it's going to disappear in behind. And then we will have our eye in place. Everything's looking good. And then I'm just going to secure with my needle. I'm going to take this little, what I call it, the gleam in his eye, or her eye, it's probably a girl. So I've got it in between the pupil and the color round here, so in between the second and third round of the eye. And I just want it to be a little, maybe 2 stitches over. And all I'm going to do is simply thread it through underneath, and then I'm just going to pull it through and cut it off. And once I thread it through, I'm just going to loosen it a tiny bit to make sure it's not pulling really tight. And then I'm simply going to snip this off. That end's already been secured before it even goes through there, and I doubt it's going to move around enough, but you could also tie it off. So that's an eye. And then the second part is obviously doing the second eye. And the second eye is much more important in its placement than the first, because you basically want to match everything about this. You want to match the angle, you want to match the eyelash length and angle, you want to match how far it is from the horn, you want to match how far it is from the bottom. So the second eye is much harder than the first as far as being consistent, and you really want to be consistent. You can choose if you want to have the little glimmer be on the same side. I mean, if it was a real eye, my husband points this out to me all the time, if it's a real eye, it would be on the same side of the pupil, so here on the right each time. But I kind of like to do it like this, so that either side you're looking at it, it kind of looks the same. So it's up to you. I'm going to do it like this. All the other loose ends I'm going to just tuck behind my ear and sew them around in place. But again, you want to make sure that you're ending up the same distance away from the horn, from that center invisible line here, the same distance away from the bottom of the hat, so I'm kind of judging it based on how far it is from the single crochet row, and then same angle. So I'm going to sew this in place with the lashes in the exact same way I did, and just I'm being more mindful to stop and check every time I do a couple stitches, check and make sure it's lining up, and if it's not, I might pull it back out and adjust it again. So we'll come back after I've got the second eye in place and we'll talk about the hair. Okay, so I have my eyes in place and I'm very happy with their placement overall, and I feel like they look consistent to each other, and overall we are ready to move on to the last step, which is the hair. Now with the hair, I'm just going to slide this out of the way. We have 3 different lengths. We have, and in my case I did 2 colors. You can do as many colors as you want, you just adjust the number of each color based on how many you need. So you need to have 2 of the shortest ones, which look like this. I chose to have 1 of each color. You can have, then you have 2 slightly longer ones. So the short ones are 30 double crochets. The medium ones are 40, and you just have 2 of each of those, and then all the rest are the long ones, which are 50 double crochets, which look like this. And again, like I said earlier, I starched them with a spray starch. I believe it helps keep them a little bit rigid. You can feel them, they're a little bit crispier, but that will help them keep their spiral better, which is very, very important part of this curly unicorn. If they do lose some of their spiral, you can just wrap them around your finger, and that's fine, and they'll just sort of get back into the spot. But if your kid's gonna be running around a lot, I figured the spray starch can't hurt, and it will probably most likely help. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the 4 that are different sizes, and the rest are all the same. So I've got the 2 small ones and the 2 medium ones. So what we want is the small ones are gonna come, they're going to be put in the front here, and so you're going to put 1 here and 1 here, just kind of right behind the horn, and then the medium ones are going to sit right in between the ears, and there's just going to be the 2 of them put there, and then all the rest are going to be put along the back. So the front ones are going to go along the base of the horn there, and then the middle ones are going to go right in between the ears. And so when I say go there, I take my crochet hook or whatever you want to use. I'll start with the small ones. With mine I checkerboard them. I'll pull in my other ones to show you. So basically I've got my small ones here, my 2 small ones. I put a purple and a pink, and then my 2 mediums, I did the pink then the purple to make it kind of checkerboard. Again, you can do half on one side, half on the other if you do 2 colors. You can do a whole bunch of colors. You can spray glitter on these things. You can do whatever. Use a sparkling yarn. I had someone send me a picture of their pattern or their project that they made for my pattern, and they used a glitter yarn, which I thought was great. So what you're gonna do is I'm gonna go inside the hat, and I'm just gonna poke out where I roughly want these to be. It might even be easier to put the mediums in there first, so I'm gonna do that. So I'm just gonna go to the base of one ear and grab one of my medium size ones. And again, you want this curl to sort of corkscrew forward like this. So I'm gonna grab it so that I've got the right side facing me. And I'm just gonna pull these threads through. And that's all I'm gonna do for now, is simply pull the threads through where I want them. And then I'll go onto the inside and I'll tie them in a knot, and then you hide the threads from there. So this part actually doesn't take nearly as long as you might think. And it just depends on how you weave in ends at the very end. So again, the purple one, I'm putting the right side forwards here. Sorry for the awkward angle of my arms, but I'm trying to show the camera. I'm left-handed, so I'm doing it. Look at my left hand. And again, we're just going to have these ones right in between the ears. So you should have at least enough space to put them in there, like that. And then I'm going to put the small ones just right in front of them, probably, I don't know, maybe half of the circle ahead of them. Again, it doesn't really matter, and you can play around with it. I'm going to checkerboard it, so this time I'm going to put the purple over on the right side. Just grabbing both sides, pulling them through, pulling the strands all the way through. And again, you might want to have these strands be quite long when you're making this garment, depending on how you want to get rid of the ends. And I'll talk about the different ways to do that. And I know the horn's kind of in the way here from seeing, but I'm simply putting it through. I'm just going to tie them in knots on the inside anyways. Okay, so those are in. Now I'm just going to go onto the inside. I'm just going to pull it around. So there's my front two, my middle two. Again, this might look crazy, but all I'm going to do is pull them tight to make sure they're close in, and I'm going to tie a knot. And then what you do from here, if you want to, you can go ahead and just cut them and leave them, and they might bug the kid's head a little bit, but they're not going to go anywhere. They're in a knot. So just make them a little bit shorter like that. Or you can pull them back through and you can weave the ends in. That would take a long time because you don't have much room on the coil to actually do anything as far as weaving the ends in go, and then they might kind of show up as there becomes some wear and tear. I'm going to take the really lazy approach, not the laziest approach, but it's kind of lazy. Laziest would be just leaving the ends there, because they probably won't really bug the kid at all anyways. What I'm going to do is I've actually crocheted a little panel of the cream color here, which is a Lips and Threads Impeccable. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to adhere this to the inside to just cover those ends so that they're not showing. That's a really lazy approach to it, but weaving in all those individual ends into these coils would be quite an endeavor. Okay, so those are tied, so I can at least show you that. And then depending on whichever way your kid wants to have the part, you can lay them on one side or the other, it doesn't really matter. And the idea is that you've just got the two shorter ones kind of hanging in front and then the two longer ones over there. You can do that, it doesn't really look that great, but I would do it all on one side. And then all the rest is going to go on the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start probably in this the end of that first or second round there. And I'm just going to do 4 along here, and again the placement is not very important, so I'm just going to do 4 in a line, and then I'm going to do 4 in a line underneath, 4 in a line, and 4 in a line, because you've got 16 of these long coils. So I'm going to do 4, 4, 4, 4 to make a 4x4 grid, and I'm just going to simply put them in so that they're kind of exactly like that, a grid, and then I'm going to flip it in and tie. So I will record it. I may not chit-chat through it, or I may chit-chat about something random, but I am going to checkerboard them as well. So I'm going to start with a pink one here, because I had a purple. Again, so rhyme or reason, you don't have to only put 16, you can make 100 of these if you want to, and make this huge mane of curly hair. You can make the hair straight if you want to. Now these ones I am going to put them in, it's alright, my hook is caught. I'm going to put them in so that the right side again is facing me because they're going to curl down this way. So this is just me, I'm starting from the center here. Okay, I have taken all my ends, pulled them through, tied them off, trimmed them down. I will probably put a patch over top on the inside and just sew it in place here. But if I turn it back around, you can see here's the hat and everything. All the long ones should hang out the back. Perfect. And the short ones come out front. And there we have it. There is our unicorn hat. Show you the back with all the curls. Again, you can do whatever you'd like with the hair. I would love to see photos of people's finished objects if you put them in Ravelry, or you can email them to me, or I think you might be able to add them on my blog as a comment. So go to homemadebygiggles.com. You can find me through there on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, which you're obviously watching right now. And yeah, enjoy my site, enjoy my patterns, and please send me emails and feedback on anything, or if you have any questions about how something gets done. Even if it's simple or trivial thing, I'd love to help out people because I just love sharing my love of crochet and knitting with the world. So thanks a lot for listening, and let me know if you have any questions.